You know, when people talk about the worst day of their lives, they usually mention losing a loved one, a job, or something else life-shattering. I never thought my worst day would start with something as seemingly mundane as opening a piece of mail. It was just a regular Tuesday, or so I thought. I was sitting in the kitchen, sipping on my morning coffee, when I heard the mail drop through the slot. Little did I know that what I was about to find in that mail would completely change my life. There was an envelope addressed to me, from a DNA testing company. My heart raced a little, not out of fear, but out of curiosity. My son, Jason, was about to turn 1, and as a kind of fun birthday idea, my wife, Emily, suggested we do those ancestry DNA tests. I agreed, thinking it would be cool to know where our roots traced back to. It was supposed to be just for fun, you know? One of those harmless things couples do together. I never in a million years expected it to reveal what it did. I tore open the envelope and unfolded the paper. I started scanning through the usual stuff, ancestry breakdown, health predispositions, until I got to the part that made my breath catch in my throat. Parentage analysis, not the biological father. My hands began to shake. I read the sentence again, thinking maybe I was just seeing things wrong. But there it was, in cold, hard text, telling me that Jason wasn't my son. My mind went blank, and for a moment, I felt like I was going to pass out right there at the kitchen table. I tried to rationalize it, tried to think of any possible explanation. Maybe the test was wrong? Maybe it was a mix-up at the lab? But deep down, I knew that wasn't the case. I was still sitting there, numb, when Emily walked into the kitchen, smiling as she always did in the mornings. "Hey, babe, what's up?" she asked, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside me. I looked up at her, and for the first time in our 5 years together, I felt nothing but rage and betrayal. "Emily," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "who is Jason's father?" She froze. I watched as her face went from confusion to panic in a matter of seconds. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, trying to sound innocent, but I could see right through her. I held up the DNA test results, my hand trembling. "This says I'm not his father. So who is? Who did you sleep with behind my back?" Her eyes widened, and she started to cry, but I wasn't having any of it. "Tell me the truth, Emily," I demanded. "Was it a one-time thing? Did you have an affair? Who the hell is Jason's father?" She collapsed into a chair, covering her face with her hands, sobbing. "I'm so sorry," she finally choked out. "I never wanted to hurt you. It was a mistake, a stupid mistake. I felt like I was going to be sick. My wife, the woman I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with, had cheated on me. And not just cheated, she'd lied to me about my own son. The one person I thought I could trust more than anyone in the world had betrayed me in the worst possible way." "Who?" I repeated, my voice cold. "I need to know, Emily." She looked up at me with tear-filled eyes, her face pale. "It was your stepdad." I froze, unable to process what she'd just said. My stepdad? My stepdad, who had been in my life since I was 10 years old. The man who had practically raised me after my mom passed away? The man I had always looked up to, trusted, and loved like my own father? No, this had to be some kind of sick joke. "What the hell are you talking about?" I demanded. "My stepdad? How could you, why would you even?" "It happened on our wedding night," she interrupted, her voice trembling. "We were all drunk, and I don't even remember how it started. But it happened, and I was too ashamed to tell you. And then I found out I was pregnant, and I didn't know what to do. I felt like the world was crashing down around me. My wedding night? The night that was supposed to be the happiest of my life, when we had pledged our love and commitment to each other. And she had gone and slept with my stepdad? The man who had been standing just a few feet away from me as I said my vows? My hands clenched into fists, and I had to fight the urge to throw something, to break something, to scream. "And you let me believe Jason was mine," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "You let me bond with him, love him, care for him, all the while knowing he wasn't my son. How could you do that to me, Emily? I didn't want to lose you," she cried. "I love you, I really do. It was a mistake, a horrible mistake, and I've regretted it every single day. Please, you have to believe me." But I didn't believe her. Not anymore. I couldn't. Not after this. I stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor, and grabbed my keys. "I need to get out of here," I muttered, turning to leave. I couldn't even look at her anymore. The woman I thought I knew was a stranger to me now. "Where are you going?" she asked, panic rising in her voice. "Away from you," I snapped, slamming the door behind me as I walked out. I needed to clear my head, to figure out what the hell I was going to do next. But one thing was for sure, things were never going to be the same. I drove around aimlessly for what felt like hours, my mind racing with thoughts I couldn't control. How could she do this to me? How could my own stepdad do this to me? Every memory I had of our relationship, every happy moment we'd shared, now felt tainted, like a lie. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Eventually, I found myself parked outside my mom's old house, the house where I'd grown up, where I'd lived with my stepdad after she died. The house where so many of my childhood memories were made. It felt strange being there, like I was revisiting a past life. A life that no longer felt real. I hadn't spoken to my stepdad in a while. We weren't estranged or anything, but life had a way of getting in the way. Still, I knew I couldn't avoid him now. I needed answers, and I was going to get them. I rang the doorbell, my heart pounding in my chest. After a few moments, the door opened, and there he was, looking as surprised to see me as I was to be there. "Hey, son," he greeted me with a smile that quickly faded when he saw the look on my face. "What's wrong?" "We need to talk," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He stepped aside to let me in, and I followed him into the living room. The same living room where we'd watched countless football games together, where he'd given me advice about girls, school, life. The same living room where he had apparently decided to betray me in the worst possible way. "What's going on?" he asked, sitting down on the couch, concern etched on his face. I didn't bother sitting. I couldn't. I was too angry, too hurt, too confused. I pulled the DNA test results out of my pocket and tossed them onto the coffee table in front of him. "Explain this." He picked up the paper, his brow furrowing as he read it. "I don't understand," he said, looking up at me. "What is this?" "It's a DNA test," I said through gritted teeth. "Jason's DNA test. It says I'm not his father. And Emily just told me why." His eyes widened, and for a moment, I saw the truth in his expression before he even said a word. He knew. He knew exactly what I was talking about. "It was a mistake," he said quietly, putting the paper down. "I never meant for it to happen." "A mistake?" I repeated, incredulous. "A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk at the grocery store. Sleeping with your stepson's wife on his wedding night is a hell of a lot more than a mistake." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I was drunk, she was drunk, things just got out of hand. I never wanted to hurt you, son. You have to believe me." "Believe you?" I shouted, my anger finally boiling over. "You've been lying to me for a year. Letting me think Jason was my son, letting me play happy family, all the while knowing you were his real father. How could you do that to me?" He didn't have an answer. He just sat there, looking at me with a mixture of guilt and regret, but it wasn't enough. Nothing he could say would ever be enough. "I don't even know who you are anymore," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and pain. "You were supposed to be the one person I could trust, the one person who would always have my back. But you've destroyed everything. My marriage, my family, my whole damn life." He looked down at his hands, unable to meet my eyes. "I know I messed up, and I'm sorry, more than you can ever know. But you have to understand, I never wanted to come between you and Emily. It just happened." "Stop saying it just happened," I snapped. "You made a choice, both of you did. And now, because of that choice, everything is ruined. Do you even understand what you've done? You've taken away my son, my wife, and any shred of trust one had in this family." "I know," he said quietly, finally looking up at me with tear-filled eyes. "I know I can't undo the past, but I want to make things right, if I can. I want to be there for Jason, to help raise him the way a father should." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Be there for Jason? You think you can just step in and be his dad now? After everything you've done?" He didn't have a response. He just sat there, looking utterly defeated. Part of me wanted to punch him, to scream at him, to make him feel even a fraction of the pain I was feeling. But another part of me, maybe the part that still remembered him as the man who had raised me after my mom died, just felt numb. "I can't do this," I muttered, turning toward the door. "I need to get out of here." "Please, don't walk away," he pleaded. "We can work through this. We're still family, no matter what." "Family?" I laughed bitterly. "You're no family of mine. Not anymore." And with that, I walked out, slamming the door behind me. As I got into my car and drove away, I felt a sense of finality that scared me. This wasn't just the end of my marriage, it felt like the end of everything I'd ever known. For the next few days, I holed up in a cheap motel, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. I couldn't go back home. Not to Emily, not to Jason. Every time I thought about them, I felt like I was going to explode. I kept replaying the past year in my head, looking for signs, clues, anything that might have hinted at what was really going on. But there was nothing. I had been completely blindsided, betrayed by the two people I trusted most. I didn't know what to do, where to go, or how to move forward. The only thing I knew for sure was that I couldn't stay in that motel room forever. Eventually, I would have to face the reality of what had happened, and decide how to deal with it. It was on the 4th day of my self-imposed exile that I finally got the call that forced me to make a decision. It was from my best friend, Mike. He was one of the few people who knew what was going on, and he had been checking in on me every day, trying to make sure I was okay. "Hey, man," he said when I picked up the phone. "How are you holding up?" "Not great," I admitted, staring at the peeling wallpaper in my motel room. "I still don't know what the hell I'm supposed to do." "Listen, I've been thinking," he said cautiously. "You know you can't stay in that motel forever. You need to figure out what your next move is." "I know," I sighed. "But what am I supposed to do? I can't go back to that house. I can't look at Emily or Jason without feeling like I'm going to lose my mind." "I get that," he said sympathetically. "But you need to think about what's best for you. What do you want to do? Do you want to try to fix things with Emily, or is that off the table?" "Fix things?" I repeated, the idea almost laughable. "How do you fix something like this?" "She lied to me, Mike. She let me think Jason was mine, and she slept with my stepdad on our wedding night. There's no coming back from that." "Yeah, I hear you," he said. "But what about Jason? I know you're hurting, but he's just a kid. He didn't ask for any of this. Have you thought about what's best for him?" I hadn't. Not really. Every time I thought about Jason, all I could think about was how he wasn't mine. But Mike was right, Jason was innocent in all of this. He didn't choose to be born into this mess. And despite everything, I still loved him. How could I not? I had been there for his first steps, his first words, every milestone in his short life. To walk away from him completely felt impossible. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice cracking. "I don't know what to do, Mike. I'm so angry, and hurt, and confused. I don't know if I can ever look at Jason the same way again, knowing he's not mine." "I get that," Mike said gently. "But just because he's not yours by blood doesn't mean he's not your son. You've been there for him since day one. You're the only father he knows." His words hit me hard, and I felt a lump forming in my throat. He was right. Jason didn't know any of this. To him, I was his dad, the man who had been there for him every day of his life. If I walked away now, I would be abandoning him, just like I felt Emily and my stepdad had abandoned me. "I don't know if I can forgive Emily," I said, tears filling my eyes. "But Jason, I can't abandon him. He doesn't deserve that." "Then maybe that's your answer," Mike said softly. "You don't have to figure everything out right now. But maybe you start by being there for Jason. He needs you, man." I nodded, even though Mike couldn't see me. "Yeah," I whispered. "Yeah, maybe you're right." After I hung up, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, trying to figure out what my next move was. I knew I couldn't go back to living with Emily, at least not right away. But I also knew I couldn't leave Jason behind. He was innocent in all of this, and he deserved better than to lose the only father he'd ever known. I made a decision that night. I was going to move out of the house, but I wasn't going to cut off contact with Jason. I would still be there for him, still be his dad, even if things were complicated with Emily. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was the best I could come up with. The next morning, I packed up my things and checked out of the motel. I didn't know where I was going to go, but I knew I couldn't keep hiding. I needed to face the situation head-on, no matter how painful it was. When I pulled up to the house, I saw Emily standing on the porch, waiting for me. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, her eyes red and puffy from crying. I didn't feel any sympathy for her, though. She had brought this on herself. "I didn't think you were coming back," she said softly as I approached. "I'm not," I replied, my voice cold. "I'm moving out." Her face crumpled, and she started to cry again. "Please, don't leave. We can work through this, I know we can. I'll do anything, just please don't leave me." "I'm not leaving Jason," I clarified. "I'll still be there for him, but I can't live here with you. Not after what you did." She nodded, wiping her tears away. "I understand. But please, can we at least talk? Can we try to work things out for Jason's sake?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to tell her there was nothing to work out, that our marriage was over. But another part of me, maybe the part that still loved her, despite everything, felt conflicted. "I'll think about it," I finally said. "But right now, I need some space." She nodded again, looking defeated. "Okay. I'll give you space. But please, don't give up on us." I didn't respond. I just walked past her, into the house, and started packing my things. I could feel her eyes on me the whole time, but I didn't look at her. I couldn't. It was too painful. Over the next few weeks, I moved into a small apartment across town. It wasn't much, but it was enough for me to get by. I started seeing Jason regularly, picking him up for visits and spending time with him. It was hard, though. Every time I looked at him, I felt a mixture of love and pain. He was a constant reminder of everything I had lost, everything that had been taken from me. Emily tried to reach out to me several times, asking if we could go to counseling, if we could try to rebuild our marriage. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. I couldn't look at her without feeling betrayed, without remembering what she had done. I told her I needed more time, and she reluctantly agreed to give me space. But as the weeks turned into months, I started to realize something. No matter how much time passed, I didn't think I would ever be able to forgive Emily. The betrayal was too deep, the pain too raw. I knew I could never go back to the way things were, no matter how much I wanted to. It was around that time that I started thinking about revenge. Not the kind of revenge that would hurt anyone physically, but something that would make Emily and my stepdad understand the depth of the pain they had caused me. Something that would make them feel even a fraction of the betrayal I felt. I knew it wasn't healthy, that it wouldn't solve anything. But the idea of getting back at them, of making them pay for what they had done, started to consume me. And before I knew it, I was making plans. My plan was simple, but effective. I decided to expose their affair to everyone they knew. Family, friends, coworkers, no one would be left in the dark. I wanted everyone to know what kind of people they really were. It started with a carefully crafted letter. I spent hours writing and rewriting it, making sure every word was perfect. I detailed everything, how Emily had cheated on me with my stepdad on our wedding night, how she had let me believe Jason was my son for over a year, how they had both betrayed me in the worst possible way. Once the letter was perfect, I made copies. Dozens of them. Then, I started mailing them out. I sent one to every member of our family, to all of our friends, even to Emily's boss and coworkers. I wanted to make sure there was no hiding from the truth. The fallout was immediate. Within days, I started getting phone calls and messages from people who had received the letter. Some were shocked, others were disgusted, but they all had the same reaction. They couldn't believe what Emily and my stepdad had done.